chopping block is Renfield, starring Nicholas Hoult and Nicolas Cage. But, folks, well, before we begin, let us warn you that this movie review is loaded with spoilers alerts everywhere. First things first, let's jump into the first summary of this film. Renfield, after years and years of helping and serving Dracula, is having second thoughts. So, he attends a self-help group meeting, trying to figure out how to break away from Dracula. Along the way, however, he causes some trouble for a drug-running prince named Teddy Lobo, runs into a female cop whom he has a slight crush on, though she cares nothing for him, and gets into trouble with both Dracula and some cops who are under the payroll of Teddy Lobo's mother, the queen of the drug-running operation. Now, after that tiny little bit, let's go on to the highlights of this film. Nicolas Cage was the best part in this movie. Hands down, period. One more time, period. Now, he was a genius, excellent, and sensational. He played it like he was Alice Cooper. He played it over the top, and at the same time, respectful of Bela Lugosi. Now, that's a great actor. They can do both. The Renfield character was really, really good. No problems. The storyline of him breaking away from Dracula was very good as well, and it actually comes from the original film from 1931. The evil guys were evil, just evil enough for you to hate them, and interesting enough for you to still be enthralled by their interaction between the good guys. And the concept of Renfield breaking away and using a modern self-help group from a church to help himself is very poignant. Number one like, Nicolas Cage. For the role of Dracula, the filmmakers hired the talented actor Nicolas Cage of Con Air, Face Off, Amos and Andrew, The Rock, and Raising Arizona, to portray the screen icon legend Bela Lugosi. Now, whoever thought of this idea actually had a brain. And though this movie is very self-defeating, Nicolas Cage is not the fault of the film. In this movie, Nicolas Cage hit a home run, and let me tell you, would have been a fast track to a new career, a rebirth of great things to come from Nicolas Cage, especially in a genre like this. There are so many neat things that we can say about him, but to put it in a simpler way, Nicolas Cage really caught the feeling of the character, of which I'm sure Bela Lugosi would be proud. That's right, Bobby. Now, like number 2, honoring the memory of Bela Lugosi. Nicolas Cage really captures in this movie the essence of Bela Lugosi, and he does it with great honor and respect.
You bet.
And not only did Bela Lugosi play the Prince of Darkness and was well favored by the public, but many years earlier, he also portrayed the role of Jesus Christ in his native country of Hungary, and he was famous for that role. And now for leg number 3, Renfield. In this movie, Renfield was actually great. But the writers are at fault for damaging the Renfield character. Now, the guy who played this Renfield character, Nicolas Hoult, read the script that was given him, and he tried to do the best that he could, and he did it well. Nicolas Hoult also does something different with Renfield, portraying the character when he is faced with doubt and indecision. Like number 4, the idea that Renfield wants to escape from Dracula, which was in the original Dracula from 1931. With Bela Lugosi and Dwight Frye. So bravo on that! The movie also takes a look at what the relationship could have been like and how Renfield, after shoveling all that snow for so many years and dealing with all sorts of foolishness, well, now he wants to go and break away and go straight and narrow. So that actually also was a good idea. It's very interesting to see how they interact with each other. That was actually well thought out. Like number 5, the bad guys. The evil characters in this movie were interesting, as they had their quirks and smirks and wicked moments. And in general, they had a strangeness to them, which made you wonder what they were up to next. And I thought that it was cool to give Teddy Lobo golden guns, which resembled the ones that Nicolas Cage used in Face Off when he portrayed Castor Troy. And now for our list of 5 dislikes.
This is gonna get juicy.
That's right, folks, because we're going to say it like it is. Number 1, too over the top, too rambunctious. She has way too much of an attitude problem. She wasn't funny. She was crass, uncouth and not likable. And in contrast, an actor like John Candy is likable as Uncle Buck, as Harry Crumb, and the guy who writes things that happen in Delirious. He just made you like him, and at the same time, he was also funny. Now, swear words, which this chick uses constantly, weren't used in the older days for every sentence, or they were used sparingly to show dislike or disdain for something, or used in anger, or even when things were getting a little hairy. That's when you use the words. But when you use swear words all the time, people turn you off in their mind. And that's kind of what you do when you see this chick. Carol Burnett or Lucille Ball would have done a much better job. Funnier and more interesting without having to curse up a storm. And number 2, the action. The action was okay, but it was a little too unrealistic. Sometimes a little too much gore, unless that was the target to make it gory. But it still had a little too much supersonic stuff in the fight scenes. It was like everyone was Dracula when only Dracula should be Dracula. Because if everyone is like Dracula, what do you need Dracula for? If every person in this film was top dog. Look at that, they're flipping everywhere. Dislike number 3. Trying to make constant the idea of breaking away from evil as semi-ridiculous. Renfield should have triumphed in his attempt to break away from Dracula. It should have made you think and feel, wow, he's trying to do something, instead of think, oh. Number 4, dislike. Renfield's wardrobe and apartment. In the beginning of this film, Renfield wears a brown shirt and disheveled hair, which is okay because that is something that the Renfield character would wear. But unfortunately, for the rest of the movie, he wears a crazy-looking sweater with pink blocks. And afterwards, he wears a maroon jacket and a strangely watermelon lilac-colored shirt, which is unacceptable and brings down the strong level of the character, which is so unlike the original Renfield.
They made him into a wimp.
They should have had him dress in a business suit.
Or even a gray sweater, which would show that he was coming out of the darkness into the light.
That's right. I've seen other directors using the aid of color to relay an extra part to the audience. Why, look at the director of Psycho 2. He did a scene where Norman Bates is caught standing between the light and the shadow to convey to the audience that Norman Bates is indecisive, confused, not knowing what to do. His thoughts are split between what he was and what he currently is. Another thing is his apartment. It should have been done a little bit better, like they should have designed it like the interior of an old England home, or a bright-colored apartment from the 70s, instead of the colors used here, which, even though they're bright colors, they don't look so bright, and the room has a strange look to it. It's like it's bright, but not bright enough.
And if Renfield was smart, he would have hung out some crucifixes instead of the welcome mat.
That's for sure. Then he wouldn't have Dracula in his living room.
Hey, Suck, if they were gonna make Renfield dress like that, they should have had him dressed like Austin Powers.
Oh,
Austin
now
Powers.
that would have been pretty darn cool.
Austin Powers, huh?
Let me ask you something, folks. Why was Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein the #1 horror comedy in history? Was it because Glenn Strange was there and not Boris Karloff? Was it because the Wolfman was there? Or was it because Bela Lugosi was Dracula meeting Abbott and Costello? A classic that's tried and true that everyone likes versus this movie. Nicolas Cage is amazing. Not the problem. Nicholas Hoult? Amazing. Still not the problem. The idea of having him breaking away from Dracula was proposed in the first movie. Not the problem. What is missing from the Renfield movie? What wasn't missing from Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein? A funny lead. Nicolas Cage is Dracula, the heavy. You have Nicholas Hoult, the undecided. Now you need a funny lead. And this movie could not select someone who had the same caliber as Lou Costello, or, as for that matter, somebody who had the same caliber as John Candy. someone who brings light to the show, because we are dealing with the Prince of Darkness. So, if they were trying to make a comedy out of Dracula, look no further than Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, in which Dracula, Bela Lugosi, and Costello stole the show.
That's how you film a comedy.
But instead, they had an Asian person that doesn't represent Asians very well at all. She curses everywhere, trying to fit in a different culture rather than being herself.
Odd.
Nobody fell in love with this character, and of all the reviews we've read, nobody faults the lead actress at all. Every review we've seen so far puts the blame on Nicolas Cage. Just Nicolas Cage. It's like it's okay to treat him badly when he was the most sensational actor in this movie. You cannot use witchcraft to defeat Dracula, as they show you in the Satanic Rites of Dracula, in which Dracula thrives under the Satanic Rites because he is under Satan. But Dracula in this movie is caught by witchcraft, which seems to make no sense. If the writers of Renfield were trying to do comedy, well, and if someone wanted to do that, they could have just done it like Dracula Dead and Loving It, which was also great. Now, this movie was able to capture Dracula very well and make it funny and interesting. Cool. There you go. But instead, the goal for the writers of Renfield was to make a strong female lead. A weak servant like Renfield, who compared to Dracula should have been one of the most overwhelming presences in the movie. But instead, the lady overshadows him in a bad way.
But if you wanted to do a comedy movie, go ahead. Well, you have very few people who do comedy.
If they wanted to make Renfield a modern story and have funny stuff, look at Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. It is highly recommended, and like I said earlier, it is the #1 horror comedy ever. Obviously, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein had a special sparkle to it, something really fantastic and magnificent. If you need a lead that's funny, there's a person like Carol Burnett. She is funny. Her show is funny. They do irreverent spin-offs on her show of classical themes like Gone with the Wind and made it funny. See? Someone like that would have been good for this movie. But to have a rude person cursing all the time, someone who is dislikable, is not funny. You have to have someone that's likable. They could be male or female, fat or skinny. A likable person that's funny. Costello was frumpy and dumpy, and he was actually funny. Fat is not the issue. Woman is not the issue. Look at Carol Burnett. She is funny, okay? Hilarious. And if you want to speak before Carol Burnett, what about her friend and legend, Lucille Ball? Women have been great comedians for a long time. Why couldn't it carry over into this film? Not sure why. Either you want a funny movie, or you want an agenda. I mean, look at Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. They had good stuff. They had their frightening moments, their comedic moments. They had women in it, but they weren't overbearing or crazy. Everything was well done, funny. Bela Lugosi was there. It was actually good. It made you laugh. And in the end, it even had a funny twist. So, that's how you make a good movie. And that is why it is #1. And that's why it beats Renfield hands down. However, if Renfield wanted to have a slightly more dramatic kind of a touch, they should have switched out the Aquafina person with that nice lady who played her sister in the movie. Because she would have been great in that role and added a niceness and sweetness to the film. They even could have designed it like a little bit like Psycho 2 and had someone like Meg Tillion there if you were just a little bit different. But unfortunately, they decided to not do that. So now, Renfield, the movie with opportunity and chances, is now lost. All that money, gone down the drain. Well, folks, that's about all for today for our movie review.